As we begin diving into specific passages in Scripture to look at how to appropriately read them as the author intends and as the audience receives, we're going to go ahead and start with Genesis 1 and 2, actually, side by side. But before we do, of course, we need to talk about the author and the audience. Now, I've taken a lot of heat as a conservative Christian by saying that I believe Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Old Testament. When I get critiqued for this, a lot of people then come at me and say, don't you know it was just a priest in the Jewish culture who wrote down these things, and something along those lines. But for whatever reason, there's some other scenario that someone else comes up with that is somehow more plausible than Moses actually being the original author. The reason that they say is because there's very little proof saying that Moses was the actual author. The problem with that is that the alternative that they come up with has significantly less proof to support their claim. I have yet to see actually any claim made that is more plausible by the preponderance of evidence. So while we may say there's very little evidence to support externally the claim that Moses was the author, there is at least some. And so we're going to operate on that assumption. And that being the case, Genesis is so named because it is a prehistory for the events that happen in the Exodus, meaning that the audience would have been the generation that left Egypt. And they're looking at, very specifically, many questions that they have about this God who has just delivered them. See, because they have lived in Egypt for 400 years, so they're familiar with the concept of God. And this God, whose name is Yahweh, and is personally involved in the lives of the Jews, leading them out as a corporate entity out of Egypt into the land of Canaan, eventually. They have many questions about how everything else came to be and how this God has interacted with it. Now you see 2 accounts, Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. Genesis 1 is an account of the creation on a macro scale. How did everything come to be? And then Genesis 2 is an account on a micro scale. What happened on the 6th day? That's very general, and of course there's some issues that you have to look at to see, yes, in fact, this is the case. But that's more or less what's happening there. Now, some of the questions, as I said, are, who is this God? How does he relate to everything? And actually the pinnacle of these 2 chapters is Genesis 2, verse 4, where you find out that Yahweh, Elohim, as it's written in the Hebrew, created the heavens and the earth. Now that's important because it's basically saying that the personal God of the Jews is also the creator of the universe, of all things, creator of everything. And what that means is it tells the Jews that Yahweh is a one-stop God shop. That is the primary purpose of these texts. There are other things, certainly, but that is primary because that is the concern of the original audience. Now, the height that Genesis 2:4 lies in between 2 of these separate, what's called pericopes, which means the narrative has a beginning and an end at a specific point. And the reason this is a focal point, Genesis 2:4, is because it lies right in between. So these 2 accounts, smack in the middle, don't miss it. Yahweh is the creator. Now this is important because Yahweh, the name of the personal God of the Jews, has not been revealed to anyone at this point. It was revealed to Moses in Exodus 3. So the author is intentionally writing back into the creation account the name of the true God of the Jews. And we can't miss that. That's an important feature. And you only pick that up in the Hebrew. But notice there's several things that I haven't said from this text. I have not said that anywhere in here is anything about dinosaurs. It's not making a claim about dinosaurs. It's not making a claim not about dinosaurs. It's because the Jews had no reason to ask any questions about dinosaurs. So we shouldn't expect to see any. So let's let the text say what the text says. Now, as I've said, there are many, many other issues regarding this text, but I want to make the point that these are primary. This is what the main purpose of this text is. And as we carry forward, we'll see how certain other things that are included in this text, for instance, man and woman, mankind, are made in the image and likeness of God. This is important because as the Jews are passing through lands and see strange and foreign people, they are told every person on this planet is equally an image bearer of the Lord. That's important, and we'll carry that through. But the main purpose of this text is that God is a one-stop God shop.